Okay, good morning, everybody. Can y'all hear me? Arte, you got me? Awesome. What's up, Drew? What's up, Michael Lisa? Yo, I gotta just real quick before I get into this thing, I have to give like so much props to Michael Lisa. She is such a stinking stud. Her and her husband. These guys joined the program on August 28th, but I don't think that you were necessarily prospecting right out of the gate, were you, Michael? No. She hits me up the other night. I think she like went through the course and then the next day started prospecting. And she calls me. I'm at my daughter's volleyball game and she's like, "Hey, Johnny, like, can you help? Like, I think I might be like in a little bit deep." And she ended up having a pre-foreclosure situation, a seller, beautiful, like fix and flip, or not even a fix and flip, just a lipstick flip, like totally legit. And just got right after it. So like, I love when people get into the program, they get in this business and they start doing the work that actually matters. Lisa, can you come off mute real quick? I'm just going to put you right on the hot seat, dog.
Hi.
What's up?
How are you?
Talk to me. What's going on with that deal now that I got you on here?
So last night I reached out, I've been following up every day. And so yesterday I reached out and asked him if we couldn't see the house, if we could just at least get pictures of kitchen and bathrooms, most important. And he said, yes. I didn't hear anything back. I know he's meeting with an attorney today to go over options because he had talked about trying to file bankruptcy to keep the house. So I'm going to reach out again this afternoon and see what's going on. But I know for him, he hasn't told his wife anything. So I know that's like the biggest situation for him.
I know. And you had mentioned that he's got something like, I think maybe like 10 days now left until
less
the
than
auction.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny because one of the things that we were talking about initially is I think that was Thursday when you and I first spoke about this deal.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times with people who are in a pre-foreclosure situation, they got an auction coming up, they see the number and they'll say, well, I've got 13 days, left until this happens. But the reality is that they don't really actually have 13 days, right? Because they think that like weekends counts. And what they don't realize is that title and escrow, they're in banks, they're also closed on the weekends. So those are not actual working days. Like you have to account for those types of things. So it's one of the things, if you're working with people in a pre-foreclosure situation, you want to make sure that you're mentioning like, hey, I know that you've got maybe 13, total days, but that's not necessarily business or working days. And we are in a little bit of a time crunch and create some kind of urgency around, getting the deal under contract. And this particular deal, one of the things that I always do, and a lot of people, they try to, you want to get the deal under contract quickly, but one of the things that you also want to do in a foreclosure type of situation is you want to make sure that when you're putting numbers out in front of people, they're real numbers. And so if you remember, one of the first things I had said to you, Michael, was, well, can we get out and check out the property? And the reason I was like, let's get out as soon as possible to look at this property is because when we get there, the way I work, just the business, just the way I've always done business is I'm always like super transparent. Like I don't do the BS thing. I don't do the bait and switch thing. I don't put unrealistic numbers in front of sellers to get them under contract and then renegotiate and do all that stuff. I always want to give real numbers and then I want to deliver on those numbers when I can. So it was like, hey, can we get out there tomorrow morning to take a look at this property, get an idea of what the rehab might potentially look like? Because what you had communicated to me was, well, this property is in really a great condition. The exterior certainly looks like it's in really great condition, but you never actually know until you get in there. And so when we go and we make an offer and say, hey, this is where we want to be, or this is where we would need to be on this property. When you got to go back and change that number at the 11th hour, when you actually see what it looks like, this can create a lot of problems and a lot of stress for the sellers and also us, right? So in the blueprint, I teach everybody, generally speaking, to start on market, go on market, have some conversations and work on market properties. Cause I think it's the easiest. I think it's the easiest way to get started, kind of get the marbles out of your mouth. But when you're working pre-foreclosures, there's really a time crunch and it can create all kinds of stress. This seller his wife doesn't even know that they're losing the house. Like, dude, that has to be, I can tell you from a man's perspective, that has to be like the worst feeling you could ever have. Because, as men and, I know different with men and women, but for sure, when you're a man and you feel like you cannot provide for your family, this is and I've been there, this is not a great place to be. So anyways, thank you for coming off mute and be willing to do that. All right, let me unpin you real quick here. And I love the fact that you just got right to work. So I just want to welcome you guys all. I want to talk about why we're doing this, right? So one of the things that I've noticed inside of just my program is that, and not even just my program, but like a lot of programs, because I'm part of a bunch of other programs, I noticed that there are a lot of new people who get into the business, and they, generally speaking, they do everything but like what is like really, really important to do. And that's to make phone calls and have conversations with sellers or agents and have conversations about actually buying properties. And this is the most important thing. A lot of people will do things like, make sure they have a ink in their printer, or make sure they have all the software programs, or do all these things. But again, the most important thing is just to be dialing. And so what I have found is that when you're working inside of a community and you can see people calling and dialing and reaching out and having, making connections with sellers and also making connection with agents, that is really encouraging. And it was for me. I've done a couple of these deals and been on other people's Zooms. And as soon as I saw people dialing, I'm like, dude, like, I don't even want to watch any more of this. I just want to call and get deals. And ultimately, putting numbers in front of people is what's going to get you deals. So a couple things that are happening. First thing, we have a very set, like scripts that we use, right? And if you don't have any scripts, I went ahead and I put a link to my scripts. So in the chat, you can find it, the Wholesaler Blueprint /tools. It's going to get you scripts. It's going to get you some, also some calculators, right? Because you're going to need those if you're putting numbers out in front of people. Anybody who's part of the program already has all that stuff anyways, but that's where, you can find some scripts. I've got a couple of things happening. First, I always want to start these by just doing like some role play. So if that's you, if you're, and I see, who's on here? I see Jeremy on here, and Jeremy is awesome. We did some role playing, when he first started, he's like, actually hit me up and was like, hey, Johnny, can we do some role play? And he's such a stud. And I feel like we tune some of the things that he was saying to the sellers and to the agents. And hopefully it's awesome. I know he's doing a lot of work and getting after, but role play is really important. Even for me, like if I jump on a call right now with a seller, or I jump on a call with an agent, for sure, I'm not going to be smooth. Like, and the idea is when you're having conversations with agents and sellers, is to be fluid in the conversation, is to have already kind of like worked the marbles out of your mouth. Say the stupid things to a student or to like a partner who, they're not going to judge you. They're just going to help you get over, help you get through and just, get the words flowing. So if any of you guys feel like you're up to it and jumping off mute and doing some role play, I would love to do that with you guys and give you some coaching. You can also put me on the hot seat and we can do some stuff there, because it's good to be on both sides of that. So we'll do a little bit of role play just right out of the gates, and then we're just going to start dialing. That's what's going to be important, right? So I've allocated maybe the next 10 minutes or so to just doing some role play. And then from there on, it's going to be basically just dialing for dollars. I have my VA on here. His name's Jose Blanco. So you can see him on here. What I've asked him to do, he's dialing pre-foreclosure leads. So I've asked him when he gets somebody on the phone and they're having a conversation and he's just doing some, a little bit of, just having a conversation with them, if he'll come off mute so we can all hear him talk and have conversations. I'm going to be going direct to agents. So I'm going to be calling agents. And when I get one of them on the phone, I will also come off mute so you can hear the way that I do that. But I'd love to open the floor. But is there anybody who wants to jump off mute and do a little bit of role play with me? I'd love to do that with you guys. I was nervous about asking this question because I was wondering.
Me, pick
Harry,
me.
there you are, my dude.
Pick me. Do it.
Cool. Hey, brother, are you able to jump off or put your camera on, or?
I got a weird background and it like penetrates my face. It's like grass in the background, but it comes over. I look like I'm in a morph suit or something. It's weird.
Okay. So you can just keep it that way, I guess. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Right.
Honestly, I feel like that's better than just the regular gray background, bro.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So what do you want to do? Do you want to be the caller, or do you want me to be the caller?
I'll be the caller.
Okay, awesome. So just hit me up, ring, and then we'll just go through it.
Cool. Ring.
Hello, this is Johnny.
Hey, Johnny, this is Harry. I'm a real estate investor. I'm calling on market agents, just trying to find out information about properties I think my company might be interested in. Do you have a few minutes to talk right now?
Yeah, it's perfect. What can I do for you, Harry?
Hey, awesome. So I'm calling about 123 Main Street. It looks like a 3 bed, 2 bath, but sometimes Zillow gets the information wrong or, maybe something changes. So I always like to call the agent just to see if the information is correct. And then kind of learn a little bit more about the story behind why it's on the market and just, kind of learn a few things to see if this would be something that my team and I might be interested in. I'd really appreciate some info.
Okay, yeah, it's a 3-2. That's accurate. What questions do you have specifically about the property?
Yeah. So are there any mortgage payments owed on that, or is that free and clear?
Okay, so just real quick, I'm gonna hit timeout real quick.
Yeah,
So
sure.
real quick, you always want to start with, just kind of what's going on with the property. So, or let me back up a little bit. If you're dialing on properties that have been on market for an extended period of time, I always start with that. Like, hey, and what Pace says is, can you bring me up to speed on this property? Right. And that's a
Right.
great way to start because it's super open-ended. And sometimes what'll happen is I'll say, can you bring me up to speed on the property? And they'll be like, well, what do you mean? Right. Because, sometimes agents can be like that. It's like, well, I noticed the property's been on market for 87 days. Is there like a reason why it's not selling? So you want to kind of start with that. And I know that we didn't really set, the kind of the framework of what we're calling them, but you really want to start with, can you bring me up to speed with the property, maybe why it's not selling, and start there before you go right into the mortgage stuff, right? This is like a later in the conversation question. And the reason is because I don't know who the heck you are. I'm like, is there a mortgage on there? Like, what is this guy even asking me for this? Okay. So maybe let's kind of start over again and let's start kind of
Yeah,
like,
sure. I'll do more general.
yeah, I love it. Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome.
Cool. So, yeah, could you just tell me kind of the story behind this property? I mean, it looks like it's on market for like 83 days. So I was just kind of wondering, what the story is with that.
Yeah, the properties. So it's been on market for 83 days. We've had to do a couple price drops. We were under contract and it was an investor and they couldn't like bring the money to the table. They ended up, they never sent EMD. So it's back on the market. We've had kind of some interest, some low ball offers. But the seller just, hasn't is the seller just hasn't accepted it, and we've rejected most of the lowball offers.
So it sounds like you are interested or at least open to working with an investor as long as it makes sense to the seller, right? It just has to make sense financially.
Yeah. They're I mean, the property needs some updates. So this is a cash only deal. So generally speaking, those are just investors who are submitting offers anyways.
Right. Okay. So can you walk me through with the actual property? Like, how's the roof looking? I mean, I drove by, the siding looks fine. Can't really see the roof because it's way high up there. Can you tell me a little bit about the inside, like plumbing, electrical, what's going on with the flooring?
Yeah. So the flooring, it's going to need new carpet. The kitchen is all original. So it's not updated. Both the bathrooms are just original as well. This was an inherited property, right? So the sellers inherited it, and they're just wanting to get out of it. They live out of state. It's vacant. They're having to pay the mortgage on the property, and so yeah, they just want to be out of it.
Right. So it kind of sounds like in this situation, it's basically just more expensive to keep it, and it would make more sense just to get rid of it. But of course, you still want to make some money on it. So we got to make sure things make sense before we kind of put an offer on the table.
Yep, that's exactly it. So real quick, Harry, I just want to kind of go back just a little bit before we
Yeah.
continue. So
Yeah.
couple things that, and this comes with time, right? So a couple things when you hear somebody say like, well, it fell out of escrow, right? So notice that I mentioned that, okay? With a lot of these properties, especially with the kind of craze over wholesaling, everybody like in their mother is trying to get into this business. Okay. And obviously Pace is actually driving a ton of that. Okay. Just so many people getting into this business. When I hear somebody say, well, this property fell out of escrow, the first thing I want to know is why. And I did mention like it fell out of escrow, they never sent their EMD, but you want to ask that question. Okay. You want to ask that question because it's going to open up all kinds of answers for you. Well, why do you think it fell out of escrow? Why do you think they never brought that money? Well, their offer price was this. They did mention that the rehab cost was higher than what they thought it was, these types of things. And when you ask that question, you want to communicate back to the agent, like, look, if this property already fell out of escrow one time, or two times or whatever, because sometimes they go in and out of escrow. Okay. This is the worst thing that you ever want to do is have a property that's been in and out of escrow, be, number 3 to the party, and then have to cancel as well. Right. First thing, it's going to piss off the seller. And, we definitely don't want to piss off the seller. It's going to piss off the agent for sure. We don't want to piss off the agent because we want them to be, a referral partner. But more than any of that, we don't want to waste any time. Okay. So when we get on these calls, and it's funny because if you see, so Art Costello is on this call, right? This dude trained me in the mortgage business. And one of the things that he trained me on and he taught me was when I'm talking to a potential buyer or a borrower in that case, the first thing I want to do is I want to eliminate, I want to kill the deal. I don't want to do the deal. I want to find everything that's wrong with it. Now, I don't want to communicate it that way, right? But I do want to ask, well, listen, if it's fallen out of escrow 2 or 3 times, Mr. Agent, I don't want to be number 3. So if maybe you can expand on why you think that's happening. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. If you think that their numbers were off, sometimes ask, like, what do you think that number should be? Look, and I'll ask things like, do you do a lot of deals in this market? And they might say, oh yeah, I worked in this market for 15 years. I'm really familiar with it. Awesome, man. Can you tell me, like, what do you think this property is going to need for rehab? And if I were to come in, and I know you're not a contractor, I totally get it, but like, what do you think it would need to fix this property? Right. And listen, here's what I don't care. I don't actually care about that, what they say in that number. Okay. Because I'm just creating relationship. I want to know. In my experience, a lot of the agents, that number is way lower than it actually should be. They really shouldn't know because this is not their business, but we want to ask the question. What do you think that number looks like, in terms of rehab? And Mr. Agent, if I were to do that, if I were to put that 60, 70, 80,000 bucks into this property, what do you think it might be worth? Do you know any comps that might be, like to that level, to that rehab level? Can you give me an idea? And again, I know this is not, I know this is not your job to know this, but since you know the market, I would love to know. Okay. So definitely ask that question. Okay.
Yeah. So
also go ahead.
Sorry.
Go
So
ahead.
2 things really
No.
quick. Like when I tried to bridge the conversation, like they said, somebody else tried to make an offer, or EMD fell through. I kind of chose to take that and be like, oh, okay, so this is something that you're, comfortable working with investors, because I know some people, they only deal with traditional buyers. So when there's an investor in the conversation, they might tense up like, oh, this guy is like, trying to lowball me or whatever. So trying to gauge, like we're making up the conversation as we go, right? But trying to kind of gauge like where it's going. And then as well with like running comps and stuff, I had a thought of asking her like, hey, do you have any idea of what comps would go for in this area? But I know the area really well because I'm local, and she is not necessarily local to this area. So I kind of held back asking that on the phone call, the one earlier today, I mean. But yeah, I mean, it's like, it's rapport building, but at the same time, I feel like I don't want to ask too many questions to make myself appear like I'm a novice, even if this is my first deal or my 10th deal. So I'm kind of like, I'm kind of seesawing that, you know what I mean?
I do. And don't overthink it that way. Right. Because, we have the tendency to make it about us, and what everybody loves to do, man, they love to be the expert, bro. And when you have the conversation with an agent and you allow them to fill that place, right? Like let it be about them. Let them tell you about, and listen, not all agents are going to be open to this. Sometimes you'll ask that question and they will be really lame on the other end. Well, you should know these things. Like, I'm going to do my due. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, you have to remember the purpose of the call. Okay. The purpose of the call is to ask about the current property on market and get information about it and do those types of things. But the secondary purpose is to turn this agent into a referral partner and have them sending us, off-market properties or writing offers in their market. And so I know that there can be this thing, especially for new people, where they feel like nobody loves working with investors. Like people don't like working with investors because they lowball and they do all these types of things. Those people are not going to be your partners. They're not, and you're going to run into those people. I was on a call with Michael Saturday where we called an agent. She was working with somebody on market. We called the agent, had a conversation with them. I was super grouchy because I was in my car and I was hot. And so I was kind of a grouch. I recorded it. I will not post it because I was such a jerk. And I actually felt terrible. I had to apologize, but I was just not a great call. But all he does is look for properties for investors. And so those are the people that we're really looking for. And, here in Orange County, we have agents that all they're doing is hunting. Remember, these people, a real estate agent, they spend just speaking in generalities, they're calling and they're looking for listings. So they're looking for people who are going to sell. Now, if a property needs significant rehab, it creates challenges around loans. Okay. So if a property needs new flooring, or if it's got holes in the walls, or there's exposed electrical or roof damage, these people are not going to get a conventional loan. A conventional lender will not approve that. Okay. It only has to be cash. A lot of agents, and not all agents, know that. And so they're expecting investors. If you're looking at the listings, a lot of times it just says like investor specials, calling all investors. And so they should, generally speaking, they will know that an investor is going to call on that. So don't feel some sort of way when and I totally get it, right? Because you can feel like, oh, I am lowballing. But the reality is, if you're thinking, well, I'm lowballing, you're not really lowballing. What you're doing is you're offering the solution that works for you. Okay. So I do care what the seller is asking for the property. I care, but not really. Okay. Because what I care about more is what number works for me. My job is to come in and purchase this property and do X, Y, and Z and make money. So I'm an investor. So this is the number that works for me. It may not be the best for your seller, but this is where I would need to be on this property. Does that make sense? And you have to position it that way and do it in a non-offensive way. This is where the our golden email templates really come into play, because we have the call with the agent and then we turn around and we say, I'm going to put these numbers in writing. I'm going to send you a letter of intent. And then the body of the email really spells out what it is that we do, because it's kind of like when an agent is, when they're prospecting for a buyer or a seller, they know that they're really looking long. It's a long play for them, right? Like if I want to sell my house, I'm going to sell my house when it's time for me to sell my house. And so what the agent is trying to do is they're trying to be top of mind when that happens. Okay. So follow the chain, right? Seller is going to sell when they want. Agent wants to be top of mind when that happens. Investor wants to be top of mind when they get it, right? And so this is what the secondary thing. So certainly you will get deals on market. Okay, certainly. I have a couple bangers closing this week. I'm really excited to share the videos and stuff, but certainly you'll get those. But the secondary thing is to be on top of mind when those properties come. So the call, if you're thinking like, I'm getting on this call and I'm just trying to lowball and buy this really cheap, and just don't overthink it. And I'm not saying you are, bro. I'm not saying, because I'm talking to everybody on this who might be watching. Okay. Don't overthink it. I am guilty. I am so guilty of that. This is one of the reasons that I stopped looking at comps or trying to scrub deals prior to getting on calls with agents. I would just die real quick. Hey, Jose, if you get somebody on the hook, just jump off mute, bro. Don't worry about interrupting us. Okay. So
no problem, man. I'm hearing.
Okay, bro. So, when we, this is one of the reasons I stopped, because it's a waste of time. It's like, look, I just want to get on the call, find out some details and position myself this way. So I know that was kind of a long rant right in the middle of this, but I wanted to use this opportunity to just kind of coach you through the actual purpose of the call. Okay, man. So maybe we should pick up where we left off. And by the way, I appreciate you coming off.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I didn't bother running any comps before the call, because I've done calls for calling agents on behalf of another company before, and there's nothing to it. It's just everyone kind of has their own script and how they like to plug people into the system and whatnot. So for me, I just wanted to learn about the property and whatnot.
So let's do that. Let's
Yeah.
let's pick up where we left off. Why don't we go ahead and do the tell me about the property thing.
Got you. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I was looking at this on Zillow, but I was hoping that you could tell me more about the property because you're the expert there, and sometimes Zillow doesn't have all the relevant stuff. So what can you tell me about this property? Like, what's the story behind it?
Well, the property needs some rehab. Kitchen is all original, definitely needs to be updated. Bathrooms also all original. Both of them, they're gonna need to be updated. The backyard is really there's no landscaping. So, we need to, that would be something that we would need to. Are you wanting to live here? Is this going to be your primary or I can't remember what you said.
I'm sorry, I forgot to specify that. So I'm a real estate investor. I have a team that does deals locally and nationally, and we like to specialize in these types of properties that are fix and flippers. I mean, we have no problem going in there doing rehab, so that's not an intimidation at all. Just knowing exactly, what it looks like, it just gives us kind of more context as far as how much time might be required, how much money might be required. So, we have to come up with a number that works for us, but hopefully it also works for the seller as well.
Okay. Okay. Well, what do you think that number is?
So I wouldn't be able to really give you that number on the call because my team would have to underwrite the deal, do some comps, do some research. And then we would be able to give you a letter of intent. So that's not a legally binding contract. It kind of just presents a conversation so that we can come on terms with, what works for us.
Okay, awesome. So you don't have a number right now then?
Yeah, I don't have a number right now top of line because, the Zillow, let's just make something up. The Zillow listing is at 200K, right? So you already told me that there's, some flooring that needs to happen. I think the roofing you mentioned needs to be patched up a bit. So we have some general ideas, but we never like to quote anything because then if we have to go back on that, it just makes us look bad. So we like to be thoroughly prepared when we make an offer so that everybody's on the same page. We work well with integrity and transparency, and it just makes sense that we take some time, maybe like a day or two, get some numbers going, and then we'll be in full communication with you because we would love to keep working together on future properties.
Okay, awesome. So is there anything else that you need to know about this property?
Yeah, so I think at this point in time, my team's going to want to know, is this owned free and clear? Is there any mortgage payments owed? Any liens on the property? Stuff like that we can probably find out through county records, but it just helps that the agent kind of communicates that with us if you're aware of that.
Yeah, the seller does have a mortgage on the property. So
Gotcha.
what they're asking 325 and their mortgage is like right around 310. So there's not really a lot of room to move because
Okay.
the difference between the 310 and 325, like that's agent fees and closing costs and stuff like that. So they're pretty firm on the price.
Right. So in this case, just wanted to know, are you familiar with creative finance, like subject to?
I am. I heard it was like a scam or something. I don't really know all the details.
Well, let me just kind of give you the 30,000 foot view just in like 30 seconds or so. So in this type of situation where the seller owes money on their property, obviously there's not a lot of spread in between, right? But you're representing them, trying to get them the best deal possible. So in this case, it would make more sense for somebody to basically take over those payments so they could walk away from the deal where they're not out of pocket with closing costs, they're not out of pocket with realtor costs and stuff like that. So we're basically a solution to the problem that they have. And in the seller's mind, they might be thinking, listen, I just want cash to get out of here. But in the reality, if somebody just pays cash, they still have to pay the mortgage, right? So what we do, and then I would kind of get into like a little bit more about how the process works, but I'm not trying to give them like the dictionary book, like just something to kind of help them to understand more. So basically, Mr. Agent, when we write up our LOI, we would basically include a summary of the difference between the creative solution and a cash offer. So in this case, it's subject to the existing mortgage that we would be taking over. This is basically our bread and butter. We've worked with a lot of people in this space, and we are confident that we can provide an offer that we think we would really work out in the situation.
Yeah, we can. I don't know if I don't really understand it. So, but I could definitely take a look. And
yeah, definitely.
you put something in writing or something so I can understand it?
Yeah, absolutely. That whole summary, that email that we'll send you, it'll help you position yourself as knowing more about it first, so you feel confident to share with the seller. So when you're both on the same page, that communication can just be a bit more, comfortable. So if they have questions, you can then kind of convey that to us. And we can just kind of stay in clear communication until we have an actual conversation about, hey, here's our set numbers, does this work or does this not work?
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Cool.
Cool. So what was your email again?
Just agent123 at whatever. Here's what I would do real quick, Harry, is I would,
Is that too wordy?
Yeah, I would. First thing, that was excellent. Pitch on the sub two for sure. Just, if I'm just giving any type of constructive criticism
Yeah, please,
on that,
please.
first thing, it was awesome. Takes big ones to jump off Zoom or jump on here, live and do that. So props to you, bro. But if I'm giving any type of criticism or, trying to help here,
Please.
the only thing that I would do maybe a little bit different is just keeping it really kind of short and sweet. I like how you did the 30-second thing. So it's basically, I say, it's just a way for your seller to, instead of maybe having to stroke a check at closing, they could walk away with some money. It would probably make them really, they'd probably be happy with that. And if I were to do that, is that something you would be able to put out in front of them? This is what I would ask. So I'm trying to progress the conversation. So if I were to give you those numbers, could you put those out in front of them for me? This is what I want to ask. Yeah, I can do that. I don't really get it. Here's the deal. I'll send you an email. It kind of breaks down how it all works. Basically, we just start making payments on the current mortgage. Of course, this is not for everybody, but this is the ideal situation for your seller, because otherwise they got to write a check or they walk away with nothing. So this could be a potential solution for them to walk away with some money and everybody kind of wins. I'll put all that information in an email so you can understand how your seller's protected, how we're protected. I'm not even sure if this is something that we would want to do. What I would need to know is the balance on the current mortgage. I need to know the interest rate. I need to know the monthly payment. Do you have any of that information? And this is how we progress it, right? So we let them know what it is that what we're looking for and what we'll do. We don't give them time to come back and say, no, we don't want to do that, blah, 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 because most of the agents don't understand it anyways, right? Even though we learn about it when we get our license, most don't. They think it's like a scam or whatever. And so they're going to be their initial reaction is always going to be no, because they want to protect their seller. They're coming from a really good place. And so it's always not on the first date type of deal. We're not hitting the sheet. You're not getting between the sheets on the first date. It's just you get a little bit of information, put some stuff out, which you did. I'm just telling you the way I do it. So you can maybe have, so you can maybe just have that kind of in your back pocket as well. So I want to lay it out in front of them. This is the way that your seller could potentially walk away with more money. It helps us acquire the property cheaper because, the problem right now is interest rates. And this is a problem a lot of investors are having. There's a lot of buyers are having. So this helps everybody. So what I'll do is I'll put all that information in an email with a breakdown so you can understand how it works. You can just forward that to your seller or have a conversation, whatever you choose. What I would need to know if this is even something we could do is I would need to know the balance on the current mortgage, which you already got, the current monthly payments, and the interest rate. And that's going to allow me to understand why you're asking those questions. It's also going to allow you to jump offline and run the numbers and make sure they make sense.
Right.
You tracking?
Yeah. Balance payments and interest. And it's interesting because I'm more of a technical analytical person, but I also love writing copy, and writing copy requires that it be benefits driven. And sometimes that requires taking out a lot of the technical stuff, but you need to understand the technical stuff to understand the benefits. So it's kind of like, was this too wordy or is this just wordy enough? I can't tell.
Yeah, I know you are really technical, and even just based on our conversation yesterday, you're super detail oriented. So that will serve you well, but also understanding that in the sales cycle, it's about progressing the call.
Right.
Getting the information in a very I'm controlling the conversation, but you're really just controlling the flow, right? Here's what happens next. Here's what happens next. Here's what happens next. And just getting through those things. So I do know that you're very technical, but let's see if we can let's see if we can wrap this potential call real quick. So maybe we want to circle back, and do you want to run through that sub 2 scenario again, where you kind of lay it out like that and then ask me the questions?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, let's do it.
So have you ever heard of subject to? as far as creative finance goes?
Yeah, that's a total scam, dude. I heard about it. This is like one of those Pace Morby guys.
Oh, you. So basically how subject to works is in the case of somebody being behind on their mortgage payments, I think you said they're listing through for 325 and the mortgage is like 310. They're going to be coming out of pocket with realtor fees, closing costs, the whole nine, right? So it makes more sense for them to have some cash at closing and then also have the mortgage at least being, out of their sight, out of mind. But in order to do that, we would need to come in and take over this mortgage payments. But fortunately, that's something we do. That's our bread and butter. In order to do that, in order to figure out if this is something that we actually could do, not based on finances for ourselves, but based on whether this exact situation would work out, we need to understand a bit more about the balance, the payments, the interest rate. So those specific types of details can give us the numbers to run in addition to comps and whatnot. So we can kind of figure out, is this an opportunity that we can present to you? And then once you understand it, once we give you kind of a summary of how this works, you can then present it to the seller so that they can be like, oh, okay, this makes sense. It's actually more beneficial to me because not only do I get to walk away with cash in my pocket, I don't have to worry about this mortgage thing anymore. That's one of the biggest headaches in real estate nowadays. It's people that they need to sell, but they can't afford to sell because they would have to pay in order to sell their property. So this is basically a win-win-win. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does.
Cool. So we can basically get you a summary in addition to an LOI. And the LOI is basically, it's a non-legal binding contract. It kind of just presents some potential numbers, a scenario that can work. And a summary is basically, not a lot of agents understand creative finance. So we're kind of giving them the 101 on that, just so it makes more sense to you. So then you know what to say to the seller so you can, phrase things correctly and you're not, making any mistakes or anything like that. And of course, if you have any questions, we would love to just keep continuing this conversation because ultimately we want to do deals together. We want to make tons of money with you. If that sounds cool, then let's take this to email.
Okay, cool. So email is, agent101 or whatever, gmail.com.
Right. Cool. Yeah, that sounds awesome. So my team's going to run some numbers and stuff, and we'll probably get back to you within the next day or two. Does that work?
Totally works. Real quick, before you get off this call though, a couple things you want to ask and you want to do it quick, right? You want to just say like, hey, now that I've kind of, let you know how it is that we can help with maybe this particular seller. We do cash deals, creative deals, those types of things. Do you have any maybe off market stuff that's coming up that we can, take a look at now? You want to reach for that. You want to
because I was going to do that on the email follow-up, like, hey, thanks for this information. Do you also, but like, I forget we're doing a role play. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I usually ask that at the end. Do you have any potential off-market stuff that's coming up and those types of things? Is there anything, the other thing that you can ask, and this is all going to be, this is why scripts are they're so scripty because they don't necessarily check all the boxes. You got to like have a little bit of just, move through it, and you're great at it. I'm just making the point that
it helps us to not forget things, because I could practice the script 100 times, but unless I'm reading it, I'm going to be like, I forgot those 4 things I put in specifically, so I don't forget them.
That's exactly it. So some people, you're going to ask these things, you're going to say, hey, asking about off-market stuff. And you're going to ask about maybe one of the other things I love doing is asking about properties inside their office that have maybe been on market for an extended period of time, right? So like this morning we had, our pipeline meeting with me and my team, and, we're having conversations. What's everybody doing? What do you got going on? What do you got going on? How can I help there? How can you help there? Everybody on here is probably seeing like Selling Sunset or whatever. And they do those pipeline meetings where they're talking about, hey, what do you got going on? What do you got going on? If this is an agent who's inside of like Keller Williams or EXP or Coldwell Banker or whatever, and they're part of a team, they're not even likely, they are doing pipeline meetings. And there are people on those calls or in those meetings where guys are saying like, look, I have had this property on market for 90 days. I'm not seeing a lot of action. And so when we're on the call with an agent, we want to ask them, like, are there any properties inside your brokerage that maybe you've been on market for a while that we can write some offers today? like before I let you go, and then hit them with these questions and what that's going to, and I have a YouTube video actually where I do that on the call. And as I'm on the call, she texts me an off-market property. Now, I didn't end up getting that deal. I did end up sending her numbers. Nothing ever came of it. But my point is that if you don't ask, you won't get, right? So the idea, and we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, is talking about the property on market and then bringing this person in. And you can do that whatever way you want, as long as, like, my goal with this conversation is just everybody on here who's watching, understanding the point of the call, that it's not just talking about this on market property. It's about all of them, right? So it's like, which properties do you want to make offers on? I want to make offers on all the properties, every single one of them. Let's make offers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like every single person I contact on Facebook too, about like, oh, they posted this or they posted that. Like, I want to keep track of like all this deal flow, because even if I refer somebody, it doesn't mean that's the end of that conversation. It's just like, all right, this is how this worked out, or this is how this one didn't work out.
Exactly, brother. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you jumping off and doing this role play with me, man. Big one. You got big ones, bro. I really appreciate that.
I appreciate you, man.
Sure, everybody else can appreciate that as well. Thanks, bro.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who maybe wants to jump off? I know we want to do some dialing. First, did anybody find any value to that? I feel like I hope so. I mean, it was kind of a long role play, but there are some things I really wanted to point out to everybody. If you found any value, it'd be awesome. Just throw something in the chat. Just let me know. Because there we go. Jeremy, you're also a stud on the phone, bro. Is there anybody else who wants to jump off and do a little bit of role play?
Let's do
Hey,
it.
Johnny, I had a question.
Sure.
Good
Who's that?
morning.
Let me find you.
This
Gotcha.
is Isai. Nice to meet you.
Isai, what's going on, brother?
So I have a deal that I'm direct to seller with. It's the property is in Mexico. It's 250,000 now. He's willing to negotiate the terms as far as seller finance, depending on the down payment. So I'm looking for some private money lenders, hard money lenders that will do this. Just curious to know if you have worked with any that will do the out of the country real estate, and then also, that have good rates and that sort of thing.
I haven't done any deals out of the country. I'm definitely not the right person for that. But what I'd say is there are a ton of gator lenders inside of the creative real estate, Pace Morby's free page. Are you are you a sub 2 student? Or are you just on the free page, or how are you part of either of those by any chance?
No, I'm not. So I've just been I've been watching Pace Morby for a few months now. I've done some calls. I haven't done a full transactional deal, but it's still like in the cold call type of phase, getting familiar with the terminology and whatnot.
Yeah, well, that's first thing, man. Bravo for getting into action, for sure. I mean, that's I keep saying this, but that's the most important, man. Just getting into action, and it's awesome. You got some potential deals going. I'm definitely not the person to chat with on private money out of the country, but I would say that if you go into the I think the page is Creative Real Estate by Pace Morby. That page is the free page, and there are so many gator lenders in there. I would go in and somebody else is off mute. I would go in and just ask if there's any, hold on a second. Let me mute somebody here. I would go in there and I would ask if there's any gator lenders who are willing to lend on that. This is not something that I do, or I know my team doesn't do either.
Okay, sounds good. And then one last quick question. As far as not subject to, but let's just say wholesaling, what list do you recommend to go after? I'm in the Phoenix market, by the way.
Okay, so party on. You guys are busy out there, bro. That's a hot market.
It is. It's a very competitive market.
It's really competitive, but it's also, it's also a great market to be in, and one of the things that I would say is that just to keep in, a little bit of encouragement on that side. Remember, coming into this business, there are going to be people who are really good at this business, and there are going to be people who are really not. So just because there's a lot of people in the market doesn't necessarily mean that there's a lot of really great people in the market. So just always keep that in mind. I would recommend pre-foreclosures is a really great place to work. Just make sure that there's some urgency, right? That there is some sort of auction that's coming up within the next 30 days. This is really going to be a great place to play, because they've got to make a move, right? So that's what I would do. Do you speak Spanish?
I do.
Okay, yeah. So you've got, that's kind of awesome, because you got a little bit of a you're able to communicate with the Spanish community. So one of the things and the reason I say that is because you know who Christian Hernandez is?
Yes, I've heard of him.
So Chris, he's one of the guys inside of Sub 2, does a lot of deals. He's a SoCal guy. That's where I'm from. But he does a lot of pre-foreclosure leads, dials on a lot of pre-foreclosure leads. He looks inside of a 30-day window. And what he did, and I was watching like I don't know, it was like a YouTube reel or something, but he was saying that when he first started, I think how he got his first deal was he specifically went after people who had like a Hispanic last name, because he knew that that less people will be dialing on those because of the likelihood of them speaking Spanish, or if people are just speaking English, not being able to communicate with them. So just, food for thought, bro. I mean, something to just think about.
Okay, no, great. And are you pulling these from PropStream?
So we use RedX, which is like a real estate agent software. We use RedX. It's $1. That's what Jose dials on. My guy, my VA.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate it, Johnny.
You got it, brother. Have a good one, man. Good luck. Keep me posted. Let me know how it goes.
Hey, likewise. Appreciate you. Peace.
You got it, bro. Jose mentioned in the chat, too, he was talking about something. Hold on a second. Let me get this out of here. Jose mentioned in the chat, something very good to pitch the agents is making sure that they'll still get their commission. Like, that is a really, really great point. A lot of times when we start talking to agents and we start talking about, these creative type of transactions, they don't necessarily understand all the things that are going on. And keep in mind that agents talk, right? So if one guy gives, one agent gives another agent really bad information, that sometimes just turns into like truth, and it turns into fact, and bad information can turn into fact really, really quickly. And especially around the commission, man, because agents are hypersensitive to, are they getting paid? And they should be, right? So Michael, hey, you got your hand up. You want to jump in here?
Yeah, I have a question. So should we be waiting before we call like Zillow properties? Or some that come up, it's like just came on the market today, or only a couple days. Should we wait until it sits for a little bit longer?
That is a tough question to answer.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Here's what I do. So in California, I generally speaking, let me back out of that a little bit. It's not bad to make offers on properties that have just hit the market. Remember, I was talking a little bit earlier about properties that need rehab. Okay, if this property is like a 9 out of 10, and there's
no, they wouldn't even. I called on it. It was a open house. Sorry about this guy. It was an open house.
Okay.
I couldn't go to it, but I just called because there was no pictures of the inside. So I said, well, what's going on? The outside clearly needed some work. She said they had to kick the tenant out and it needs work on the inside. So they're not posting pictures because there's a bunch of junk in there, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of why.
Yeah. So this is a great property to make offers on. So remember, at the beginning of this call, I was talking about people, about getting loans on properties. Okay. So I think we talked about this the other day too. Remember, if somebody can't get a conventional loan on a property because the property needs some sort of rehab, all of the offers that they're going to get on that property are going to be cash offers. And so day one on that type of property is a great day to put an offer in. Because remember, all of the offers they're going to get, they're going to be either wholesalers or flippers, right? So it's going to be competitive, but if you don't put an offer in, you might not get the property.
So should I just ask the agent to send me pictures? I couldn't go to the open house and there's none online.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You definitely want to ask for pictures if they have them. And then if it's a sight unseen thing, it's, get an idea of what the potential condition is. Like, look, if they can't send pictures because maybe there's a tenant who is, not allowing them in to take those pictures, they
Uh-huh.
probably, hold on one second. My Alexa's going to go off here. If they're not going to allow somebody in, you have a couple things that you can do there. First thing, you're going to have to just estimate what that potential just say like, well, if I can't get pictures and I don't know what it looks like, you just need to pretend like it's a total gut job. Like everything needs to be repaired. Okay. The other thing that you need to make sure with these types of deals is that the property is going to be delivered to you vacant, right? Because I apologize if I'm screwing this up, but I think you had mentioned that they're not paying rent, or they're just not letting people in. Did they say they're not paying rent?
They got the tenants out, but the tenants left a bunch of stuff behind. They had an open house on Saturday, so I'm assuming they got the stuff out to have an open house. But I mean,
Okay.
I'm sure that's probably just it.
Okay, got it. The reason I was asking that particular question is because when you have a weird tenant situation, it's always important to ask the question, like, is this property going to be delivered vacant? Make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always important. But yeah, no, definitely if it's a property that needs some work, put something out in front of them. Talk to the agent. Like,
Okay.
and here's the thing, dude, I'll ask the agent, like, what do you think gets this deal done?
Okay.
What do you think makes this deal go? Just ask that question. Sometimes
Okay.
they'll tell you, well, I think this will happen. Cool. Can you write that offer for me? Let's put that offer in.
Okay.
That's the way I do it.
One other question. Do you ever, so on Zillow, there's one that's listed, but it says it's a foreclosure, but it has an agent with it. Listed by, do you see that often? I don't know. I didn't know agents can list foreclosures.
Yeah. If the property is it's in California, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
So it just means that the foreclosure process has started. So they have the property listed and they're trying to sell it prior to the property being foreclosed on.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you. That's it.
You're welcome. And then renegotiating for. Let me see what this says. I heard something about slightly below asking on a fresh listing and then renegotiating for a wholesale assignment fee during the inspection period. I was confused on how that worked. I heard something about slightly below asking on a fresh listing. So what you're probably talking about, Jeremy. So Jeremy said, heard something about slightly below or offering slightly below asking on a fresh listing and then renegotiating for a wholesale assignment fee during the inspection period. I was confused on how that worked. Okay. Listen, that for me is like a bait and switch. Okay. So it reminds me of like mortgage guys who go in and say, hey, your interest rate is going to be 2.5%. And I'm going to do that at no cost. There's going to be no closing costs. And then what ends up happening in this just kind of scenario, I'm going to kind of tie it back in. I can tell the person on the other end, yeah, you're getting this really amazing deal. It's stinking awesome. We get paperwork in, we do an appraisal, we get it underwritten, we get to the kind of very end. And then I turn around and say, oh, bad news, the market moved and now your rate's not 2.5, it's 3.5, and it's going to cost you $8,000. Okay. Well, what happens sometimes is the consumer, the buyer, the borrower in that scenario is like, well, if you say, I'm not happy about it, but what am I going to do? And then they sign the paperwork. Right. So for me, this is like way below the line. Right. So what I always say is, I want to be super transparent up front. So the number I give you is going to be the number that I deliver on, right? And so tying it all back around, if I'm going to give you a number, and I want to deliver on that, I want to see the property, I want to understand what the rehab and those types of things are, because I want this to be smooth for everybody. And if you communicate with the agent, they're going to be more likely to work with you. Remember the agent, they're going to have influence over the seller. The seller is either going to say, look, this guy offered me this price. I don't think he's going to close. This guy offered me this price, but I think he will close, right? So there's going to be some influence given there by the agent. And if you're going around and you're offering a number that is below or is just slightly below the offering price, and then you go renegotiate during inspection period, you're going to piss everybody off. There's a caveat, right? So there's an asterisk. Sometimes that has to happen. I'll give you an example. I had a property under contract, a 4-unit property in Lubbock, Texas. I was on the call with the owner who is also the agent. I said, we negotiated the numbers, got under contract. They told me the property had been rehabbed. Unit 1, 2, and 3 had been rehabbed. And number 4 was the only one that didn't be rehabbed or didn't be. That hadn't been rehabbed. Sorry. So we, get under contract. We send an inspector down there. Come to find out, the roof needs to be replaced. Not only the units A, B, and C, they had been rehabbed, but they hadn't been rehabbed to where she said they were rehabbed. There was a problem with like the electrical; it wasn't grounded or something, some like safety issue, and the windows in the entire property needed to be replaced as well. So then, because it was some sort of like living situation, it wasn't up to code or something, I don't know. So then when I went back to them and I said, look, we do need to renegotiate now because you told me on this call, this is what the condition of the property was. And now after inspection, we're finding out all of these problems. Now I feel okay with renegotiating the price because I'm not just making crap up. I didn't offer a number to get it under contract and then turn around and screw everybody, right? Like, no, I just wanted to do that to get it under contract. And now I'm going to go basically and just offer you the real number. I just don't operate like that. And what I always say is like, you can't buy reputation. You can't pay for it. And so for me, I play the long game. I want to be in relationship with the agents. I explain that to them. Like, look, I could, offer you what you're asking, but the reality is I don't think anybody is going to close at that number. And the agent should know that too. It doesn't mean they will know that, but the agent can run the numbers and say, well, this person is offering this number. Like, why are they offering this number so much higher than all these other cash offers? Well, they should know if they have that gap, if all the cash offers are down here and they got an offer up here, this person's not going to close. They're going to come back in and renegotiate that. Everybody has to make money in a rehab. And most of the time, everybody's working off the same numbers. Like some people work thinner, some people work fatter for margins. But for me, I just like to be super transparent. This is where I would need to be. I want to close at this number. This is what you've told me we're going to inspect, blah, 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 blah. So I don't really like that type of business, Jeremy, where people are offering these numbers that they're never going to close on. They don't even intend to. I think it's a really lousy way to operate. But one second. my camera shuts off every 30 minutes. I got to figure out how to fix that. But I don't operate like that. So it's not something I would recommend because you're going to burn a lot of bridges. You started to explain how an agent would still get paid on a sub 2. Basically, you're just going to calculate their referral fee into the sub 2 entry fee, right? So that's how an agent gets paid. You can do one of two things. You can negotiate the number down. So if they're making let's say 3% in the front and there's 3% buyer's fee, well, you don't want to pay 6% when you're acquiring a sub 2 property because it's going to be a big number and it's going to be harder to either wholesale or it's going to be harder to put an end buyer or a wrap or somebody in that property. So you can negotiate that number, specifically talking about how an agent's getting paid. Okay. That is a case-by-case scenario. If the property is not selling, it's been on the market for 180 days, the agent is going to be way more likely to take a reduction in their commission to get it moved versus if the property's been on market for 25 days. Okay. So it's a case by case, but that number is basically going to be a number that is either, brought to closing or is taken out of some sort of equity when the property is actually sold. Because not all sub 2s are backwards. Not all sub 2s are a negative equity situation. You could have 50,000 in equity, which might be enough to cover the closing costs. So it just kind of depends, Leon. This is awesome. Power hour. Awesome. Yes. Awesome. Cool. So that's it. I wanted to do some dialing, but hopefully you guys got some value. You're welcome, Jeremy. Hopefully you guys got some value in that. Kind of went a little bit different, but I just hope you guys got some value. So that's it. You guys, God bless all of you guys. I'm praying for you guys. I'm praying for your business. Let's stay in touch and rock and roll. We'll see you guys on the next one next Monday.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, guys.
You guys.